Good morning, class.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning din.
Morning.
Nag-feedback ba ako?
Morning po, ma'am.
Hindi naman.
Di naman. So, before we start, let's have a prayer. May I call on Mr. Charbel to lead a prayer?
Okay lang po. So I request everyone to put yourself in the presence of God in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our loving Father, make hulayo lungsod ng lipaang instrument for spreading your commandments. Loved one, Ananias, I love you. As one family, we dedicate this day to you. We offer everything we do to worship you, to praise you, to glorify you, and to give you thanks. Direct our actions through faith so that in everything we make act as true disciples of Christ. Through hope so that we may not be discouraged but continue to do God's will, even though it is difficult at times. Through love so that we may love you and our neighbors. This day, let our actions begin and end with your inspiration. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charbel. So, say present if you're here. Let's start with Mr. Aquino.
Present po.
Icaro.
Present po.
Priera.
Present po, ma'am.
Priarte, okay na. Adaya.
Ma'am, absent po si Adaya at nilalagnat daw po.
Okay. Excuse. Alday.
Present po, ma'am.
Bara.
Lagnat.
Present po.
Silo-silo.
Present po, ma'am.
Cuevillas.
Present po.
Degia.
Present, ma'am.
De, De Vera.
Present po, ma'am.
Pahilago.
Present po, ma'am.
Garcia.
Present po.
La Cuenta.
Present po, ma'am.
Levita.
Present po, ma'am.
Magpantay.
Present po, ma'am.
Malaluan.
Present po, ma'am.
Mendoza. Mendoza Jane.
Ma'am, wala daw po si Jane. Nag-e-exam daw po siya sa may wait lang po, ma'am.
Okay na, Miss Rayaline. Miranda.
Present
Okay na,
po.
Miss. Okay na, Miss Rayaline. Excuse na lang siya. Olave.
Present po.
Prado.
Present po, ma'am.
Recto.
Present po, ma'am.
Rodas.
Present po.
Samboa. Okay, Samboa. Sandal.
Present po, ma'am.
Silva.
Present po.
Sarmiento.
Ma'am, hindi pa rin daw po makakapasok si Miss Sarmiento gawa ng masakit pa rin daw po ang ulo gawa ng sa aksidente daw po.
Okay. Nag-chat naman siya sa akin. Miss Rus. Nandiyan ba si Miss May Rachel?
Present po, ma'am.
Agutep.
Present po.
Insyong. Wala si Miss Insyong. Makalalad.
Present po, ma'am.
And then Miss Silva, EDSA.
Present po, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, permission to speak. Hindi po ako natawag. Team Kang po.
Team Kang. Okay, nandito ka. Okay na, anak. Before we start, let me just remind you the classroom rules. Of course, be attentive. And number 2, open your cameras. So before we move on to our new lesson, who among you remembers our topic last meeting?
Silver po, ma'am. Silver po. Ma'am.
Okay, let's hear Miss Jonalyn.
The last time that you discussed, ma'am, it's all about the comics and the history of comics in the Philippines.
Oh, comics. So what do you mean by comics? Nakamute ka, Miss.
The comics is all about the relating to by comedy and
so comics is related to comedy.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that is correct. So how about the others?
Permission to answer po.
Silver po.
Okay, Miss Aliana. Aliana?
Yes po. Last meeting, we also tackled about the elements of comic and its basic parts po.
Okay. So the basic parts of comic strips. So do you remember the basic parts of comic strips?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes po.
So what are those, Mr. Charbel?
So last meeting po is we have done to tackle about the basic part of comic strips, and there are the characters, tire, speech bubble or balloon, gutter, panel, and the punchline po.
Okay, very good, Mr. Charbel. And how about who is the father of the Tagalog comics?
Magpantay po.
Yes, Miss Magpantay.
Si, Antonio or Tony Velasquez po.
Okay, so Antonio Tony Velasquez. Magpantay. So thank you, class. So before we move on to our new lesson, I want you to listen to this audio. So I want you to listen, and then later may itatanong ko sa inyo. Naririnig po ba?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Okay. Ulit.
MOR 101.9, my only radio for life. Barangay 97.1, gusto ka na. 97.9, only radio, feels good to be home. H 107.5, Wave 89.1, just good music. 106.7, Energy FM. 91.5, Wind Radio. 90.7, Love Radio. Love Love. 93.9, IFM. Ang idol ko FM. 11.1, Yes FM. Yes, the best.
Okay. So are you familiar with those tagline voices?
Yeah. Yes.
po.
So where do you usually hear them?
Formation
Radio
transmission.
po.
Radio po.
Radio.
Silva po.
Okay. So, sa radio. So what do you think is our topic for today?
Mr. Ariar.
Silva po, ma'am.
Miss Silva.
Ma'am.
Miss Silva, what is our topic for today?
Radio po.
Okay. So, ang topic natin po ngayon is all about radio. So before we start, let's have our objectives for today. At the end of the class, you should be able to define and frame the concept of radio, give the importance of radio in Philippine culture, and number 3, create a short radio script. Okay. So now, let's discuss first the definition of radio. So radio, the technology that allows the transmission of sound or other signals by modulation of electromagnetic waves, a device that can capture or receive the signal sent over radio waves and render the modulated signal as sound. So radio on board entertainment system in a car, usually including a radio receiver as well as the capability to play audio from recorded media. So it is a device that can transmit radio signals. So class, when I say radio, basically it's a device or concept that allows any kind of wireless communication. So radio is a way to send electromagnetic signals over a long distance. Of course, radio is to deliver information from one place to another. So ganito yan, class, a machine that sends radio signals called transmitter. Okay? And while a machine that picks up a signal called receiver. So when the two machine does both jobs, then that is called transceiver. Nakukuha po ba? And then when radio signals are sent out to many receivers or to many audiences at the same time, that is called broadcast. Okay? Again, so a radio is a device that allows any kind of wireless communication. So take note niyo na, transmitter, receiver, and then the broadcast. Okay, let's move on to radio trivias. So who discovered radio waves? Heinrich Hertz proved the existence of radio waves in the late 1880s. He used a spark gap attached to an induction coil and a separate spark gap on a receiving antenna. Please take note, he used induction coil and separate spark gap on a receiving antenna. So radio waves, class, are types of electromagnetic wave or EM. It is a wave consisting of both electric and magnetic fields acting in perpendicular direction. Okay, so I have here an example of electromagnetic wave. So medyo may science muna tayo ngayon. So this is electromagnetic wave. Here's the electric field. And then the magnetic field, yung kulay pula. So that is an electromagnetic wave acting in perpendicular direction. So I won't explain this electromagnetic ng sobra kasi hindi naman tayo science. So I'm just showing you electromagnetic in in a perpendicular direction. So that is an example. So again, he discovered the radio waves, Heinrich Hertz. Please remember it. And then who invented the radio? So Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi first developed the idea of radio or wireless telegraph in the 1890s. So his idea took shape in 1895 when he sent a wireless Morse code message to a source more than a kilometer away. So yung Morse code class, so this is an example. That is a Morse code. A Morse code, you can see there characters, letters, dashes, dots. So a Morse code class is a method na ginagamit sa telecommunication or telecom. So again, Guglielmo Marconi, so he developed first the idea of radio. And then, who brought radio in the Philippines? So radio in the Philippines started in 1924 with the establishment of KZKZ AM in Manila, Philippines by Henry Herman Sr., owner of the electrical supply company in Manila. So if you are going to ask, Mom, what is the difference between AM and FM? So AM, or amplitude modulation, and FM, frequency modulation. So the difference between them is the quality of the sound, and then the signal. So mas better si FM than AM. So sa mga cellphones nyo, di ba? Sa mga cellphones nyo, makikita nyo ang nakalagay na dyan is FM radio. So that is the difference. So again, he brought the radio in the Philippines. So since we brought up Henry Herman Sr., we are going to tackle the brief history of radio in the Philippines. So starting with 1924, Henry Herman Sr. decided to use 100-watt radio station instead of 50-watt radio station. So he called the radio station as KZKZ. So why did Henry Herman call that radio station as KZKZ? So bakit niya nga ba tinawag yun na KZKZ? So, di ba, class, as you all know, we are colonized by the Americans. And since we are colonized, we have to follow their rules and their laws. And in United States, all radio stations starts with KZ. So that is why Henry Herman called it as KZKZ, because we need to follow the laws. So, ayan. So, after Henry Herman tells of KZKZ in RCPC, so RCPC decided to expand the broadcast in provinces, which is in Cebu. So, KZRC or KZ Radio Cebu. So, that is, yung KZRC, hindi din siya nagtagal, class. So, 1 month lang siyang nagtagal, but bumalik din siya after 10 years. So, after 10 years, that was during World War II, or the Japanese occupation here in Manila. So, take note of that. So, yan yung 1929 RCPC launched KZRC in Cebu, broadcasting with a 100-watt transmitter, but was later sold to store owner Isaac Beck. It is now DYRC, owned by the Manila Broadcasting Company. So in the following years, they created regulatory board. So before kasi, class, yung mga radio station wasn't regulated at all. So they need they need to create regulatory board, which is radio control board. So ano ba yung ginagawa ng RCB or radio control board? So they accept all application and allocate frequencies of all radio stations in the Philippines. So basically, they manage all radio stations here in the Philippines, of course, para magkaroon ng kaayusan sa mga radio stations natin. So, that is 1929. So since we brought up the World War II or the Japanese occupation here in Manila, during that time, we have 3 radio stations. So those radio stations are KZRH, KZRM, and then KZRF. So those radio stations exist even before the Japanese occupation. So the Americans brought it here. So yung tatlong radio stations na yun, class, is pinasara din ng Japanese. So why did the Japanese did that? Because in the minds of the Japanese, radio station could be a way for Filipinos to build an alliance against them. So that's why they decided to shut down those radio stations. And then, in 1945, bumalik din naman yung mga radio stations na yun. So, unang bumalik yung KZFM radio station. So, bumalik yon. So, anong nangyari dun sa dalawa? So, yung dalawa, ginamit yun ng Japanese for their own interests, for their propaganda, para ma-brainwash tayong mga Pilipino na hindi naman sila masama. So, ginamit nila yon para ma-brainwash tayo for their own interest. And then, according to my research class, during that time, we had an radio station underground. So, nagkaroon tayo ng radio station sa ilalim ng lupa. So, bakit ginawa yon? Because they want to build an alliance against the Japanese. So, ginawa nila yon sa ilalim ng lupa because they don't want the Japanese to locate the transmitter. Yung transmitter na ginagamit. So, kaya siya nasa underground. So, before, di ba, ang call letters natin sa mga radio station starts with KZ. KZ. So, bakit ngayon, nag-start na siya sa letter D. From KZ to letter D. Kasi, class, after the war or the Japanese occupation, Coco Trinidad, take note of that, Coco Trinidad, or the father of broadcasting, went to Atlantic, USA, to propose new call letters. So he proposed first RP. So, pinopose niya muna yung RP because he wants to prove that we are the Republic of the Philippines, that we are an independent country. Unfortunately, that was rejected. Instead, they gave him another call letters, which is the letter D, stands for Dutchland or the Germany. So, ayan. So, let's move on to 1972. 1972, that was the martial law up to EDSA revolution. First of all, class, I'm not against with the Marcoses, and I'm not pro with the Marcoses either. And kasi hindi din naman ako nabuhay ng martial law. So, this is just based sa research or dun sa nabasa kong articles. So, in 1972, Marcos shut down 292 radio stations and other media platforms. So other media platforms, those are television, and then newspapers, and then the radios. So what is the purpose of Marcos na i-shut down tong mga radio stations na to or yung mga media platforms na to? Because class, Marcos ayaw ni Marcos na may masabi ang media regarding his government sa pamamalakad niya. Ayaw niya na masira ang image ng martial law sa mga Filipinos. So that is why he decided to shut down those media platforms. And yung mga media outlet na yon against with the what is yung mga against doon sa mga ginagawa ni Marcos. That is why they created another radio station. So nagkaroon ng another radio station which they called it as Rebel Station. Rebel Station or the Radio Bandido. Radio Bandido. So it was established by Father Luther. Father Luther was a Catholic priest, a president of Catholic priests. So he had two supporters in Radio Bandido. So yung dalawang yon, sila talaga yung nagbabalita regarding sa nangyayari sa bansa natin during the Marcos regime or during the martial law. And nung pinasabog na nga yung mga radio stations, yung Radio Veritas, pumasok na nga itong si Radio Bandido. So itong si Radio Bandido, hindi niya ma-reach yung mga skit areas or yung mga provisional areas kasi yung signal nila is mababa lang. So hindi na naaabot yung mga nasa Southern Luzon. And then pumasok ito si Sister Sara Manabon. Sister Sara Manabon, so tinatawag nilang it's like blessing to them because she helped the Radyo Bandido para ma-reach yung mga karatig lugar or yung mga areas as long as it is a Catholic operated station. So ayun, so kapag inopen daw ni Miss Sister Sara Manabon yung kanyang signal, ma-reach yung mga provinces as long as it is a Catholic operated radio station. So that was the martial law, and this is just a brief history class. So let's move on to the present. So in the present class, radio, part na yan ng system natin. Hindi na yan mawawala sa atin. Oo, mababawasan yung mga listeners, pwedeng mangyari yon, but hindi yan mawawala. Maaring yung radio mag-evolve because of innovations. Alam niyo naman ngayon, sobrang high-tech na lahat. Ultimo sa mga sasakyan, sa mga cellphones, may mga radyo na. So, it is really part of our culture. So that is all for the brief history of radio. Now we are going to enumerate the elements of radio. First is the voice. So voice, it stimulates our visual imagination. It creates visual images in our minds. That is voice. So next is sound effects. Sound effects in a radio program give meaning and sense of location. It adds realism to program and helps a listener to use imagination. So gaya nung nasa picture, those are some example of sound effects. And then music. Music is the soul of radio. Film, song, and classical music programs are independent programs on radio. Music is radio used as signature tunes or theme music of various radio programs. So, alam niyo na yan, music, it's very important then sa radio. So a radio script is a writing which gives the detail of how an entire program should be. A script takes some of the pressure of presenters doing live broadcasts. So radio script, yung mga broadcaster, gumagamit din sila yan to have, para maging maayos yung flow ng program. So again, these are the types of, or the elements of radio program: voice, sound effects, music, and then the radio script. So these are just some famous radio stations here in the Philippines. So Love Radio, Easy Rock Station, iHeart Palm, and Wish 107.5. So if you're familiar with Wish Bus, yun yun.
Yes.
So now, may naintindihan po ba sa discussion?
Opo.
So I hope nag-take note kayo. So yes, let's please get your notebook or any papers that you have. This will be your first activity. So you just need to complete the paragraph. So mamimili kayo yung mga nasa taas. Yan yung mga isasagot ninyo. So you just have 10 minutes to do this. Oh, klaro po ba yung direction?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you may start now.
Ma'am, ika-copy pa po.
Hindi na anak, ay ano mo na lang, sagot na lang para mabilis kayo.
Sige po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Okay. Okay, class, time's up. Let's check your work. So who wants to answer number 1?
Malaluan po. Malaluan po.
Okay,
Ma'am Levita po.
Malaluan.
Radio is a technology that allows the transmission of blank or other signals by modulation. Sounds po.
Okay. Number 1 is sounds. Transmission of sounds or other signals by modulation. Thank you, Miss Malaluan. How about number 2?
Alday po.
Ma'am Levita po.
Pantay po.
Ma'am.
Ma'am Levita po.
Okay, let's hear Miss Prado.
po.
Miss Prado?
Apa. Blank proved the existence of radio waves in the late 1880s. Heinrich Hertz po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Okay. Heinrich Hertz. So he proved the existence of radio waves. Number 3.
Alday po.
Ma'am Levita po.
Alday po.
Sige. Let's hear Miss Levita.
Nasaan na yan? He used a spark gap attached to an blank and a separate spark gap on a receiving antenna. Ano po, ma'am? Antenna pala yun. Induction coil po.
Okay, induction coil. Thank you, Miss Levita. How about number 4?
Alday po.
Silva po.
Ikaro po.
Let's hear Miss Rose.
While Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi first developed the idea of blank or wireless telegraph in 1890s. Radio po.
Okay, that was so he first developed the idea of radio or wireless telegraph. Number 4 is radio. How about the last
Alday
number?
po, ma'am. Alday po.
Silva po.
Okay, let's hear Miss Mary Joy. Naka-mute ka, Miss Mary Joy.
Radio in the Philippines started in 1924 with the establishment of KZKZ po.
Okay. Establishment of KZ. So now, you are, as you can see, this is the acronym of the word radio. So you just need to give meaning to those letters. So kayo ang bahala kung ano ang ibibigay niyong meaning sa radio. Let's say importance of radio. Let's say importance of radio in education. Importance of radio in politics. So kayo na ang bahala doon, class. So you just have 10 minutes to answer. By 8:53, tapos na kayo.
Ma'am, permission to speak po. Pipicturean po tapos isesend po sa GC.
Yes.
Thank you po.
Okay. Okay, class, time's up. Who wants to share their answers?
Silva po.
Mr. Oyard.
Okay, Miss Edsa Silva.
Ma'am, R represent real-time information. A represent a medium to educate illiterate people. D
Okay.
represent discuss and gives information. I represent instrument to transmit, receive, and broadcast information. O represent operates 24 hours a day.
Okay, thank you, Miss Silva. Edsa Silva. So how about you, Mr. Charvel?
So for me naman po, radio, R stands for radios, A and digital devices is important in now generations to offer it the best ways of communication.
Okay. That is Mr. Charvel. How about the others? Wala na?
Permission to speak po.
Okay, Mr. Icaro.
Okay po. R in stand for radio, the transmission and reception of electromagnetic waves. A. Art that provide information mostly for rural regions. D. Definition of radio is a medium of communication. I. It is important on the past events. It gives news for the people. O. Organization of radio until are still upgrading and spread. Yun lang po.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Icaro. So now, what is the importance of radio in the Philippine culture?
Mr. Oyard.
Okay, Mr. Oriarte.
So for me po, the importance of a radio in Philippine cultures, parang it is serve as a way or medium po para po mapaunlad po yung Philippine cultures at malaman po natin or magkaroon po tayo ng pag-unawa kung ano po talaga yung mga kultura na meron po ang Pilipinas at maaari po na magamit natin din yung radios to ano po to share the Philippine cultures po at magbahagi po ng iba't ibang uri ng kaalaman. Kasi mas alam po natin na malawak po yung sakop ng radios in terms po ng communications or and other aspects po.
Yes, tama yun. So radio is a device that can reach large number of people at the same time. So malaking tulong talaga ang radio to to get information. So now this will be 5 items. True or false. So you just have 5 minutes to answer this. Your time starts now. Okay, class, time's up. Let's check your work. Who wants to answer number 1?
Alday po.
Ma'am, permission to answer po.
Sino yun?
Alday po.
Miss Alday.
Number 1. Sound effects in a radio program give meaning and sense of location. True po. T.
Okay. That is true. How about number 2?
Silbi po.
Silva po.
Okay, Miss Silva. Ano yun? Kyla Kate.
Voice stimulates our visual imagination. True po.
Okay, number 2 is true. Number 3?
Ma'am, silo-silo po.
Ikaro po.
Silo. Let's hear silo-silo.
3. Henry Herman Sr. decided to use 50-watt radio station instead of 100-watt radio stations. Ano po? False po.
False. So, ano nagpamali doon?
Yung 50 watts po.
So, Henry Herman used 100 watt instead of 50. So, binaliktad lang. So, how about number 4?
Malaluan po.
Yes. Let's hear magpantay or Sanet.
Guglielmo Marconi proved the existence of radio waves in the late of 1880s. Yun po ay dapat ay 1890s po. False po.
Okay, that was false. And then?
po.
Number 5?
Olabe po.
Okay, Miss Janelle.
Radio is a device that can transmit radio signal. True po.
Okay, that is true. So please take a picture of your all activities. So send din natin yan sa Messenger and then upload it to your folder in Google Drive. So nag-check na ako last week ng folders ninyo. So nag-check na ako ng ilang activities. So complete na yung folders doon. So mag-check ulit ako later. So this will be your assignment. So you are going to create a short radio script, any topic, and then takeaways. So sa radio script plus any topic naman dyan about education, politics, or showbiz, basta a short radio script. So lagay nyo na lang siya sa soft copy na lang sa Word. So, gets po yung assignment?
Ma'am, permission to speak po. Pwede po ba sulat kamay po?
Okay, kung saan kayo comfortable, kung gusto nyo sa Word or handwritten, okay lang.
Salamat po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you then. So that would be all for today. I hope may natutunan kayo. So you may leave now the